9. Hello and welcome to In Focus. Apologies for a bit of delay in there, but still we're here to bring you the biggest discussion in town, the debate that you always follow every Sunday. I'm always Ethan Tashobia. This week, it's quite a heated debate. We are talking about journalism versus public relations, or PR, as much of you might know it. It's quite an interesting one. Now, I have some quite an interesting statements that have been made about the two sectors. Quite conflicting interests between journalism and public relations seems clear. The task of journalists is to give the news impartiality without fear or favor. Public relations, on the other hand, according to some, are the businesses of the conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses. That's where the distinction comes in. PR is subjective, journalism is objective. I don't know if that's true or not, but you will tell me. We'll get to know at the end of this discussion. In the end, there seems to be a common agreement between the two that these two siblings, let me call them siblings, work together, then there would be seamless flow of information and factual information at that. To discuss this and more, I'm joined by quite an interesting panel, and I'll reveal this in a few seconds. All right, welcome. Here are my panelists. Let me start it off with the right one who is next to me, Adeline Nzitatira
yes.
Mohoza, communications and PR specialist.
Marketing specialist.
Marketing specialist. You work with the UPA?
UAP Insurance Rwanda.
Insurance. Okay. I don't know where I got UPA from.
It's fine.
Thank you so much for joining me here.
Thank you for
And
hosting us.
of course, Kenneth Agutamba, media consultant and columnist. I don't want to mention the rest.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ken.
You're welcome.
You've been quite a popular figure on this show. We appreciate your presence. You always bring in quite
My pleasure.
Of course, next to Kenneth is Herbert Muhire, HM, I call him, my friend over there. PR practitioner and president of Public Relations Association of Rwanda. Thank you, Herbert, for coming through. And of course, the last one, but not the least, is Executive Secretary of Rwanda Journalists Association, Gonzaga Muganwa. Thank you, man.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
I understand this coming week, Rwanda is going to be hosting what we call the Africa Public Relations Association Conference, which is going to be convening from May 13th to 17th in Kigali. And the theme is changing the African story telling narrative through PR. So I want to know, let's start it off with, probably the first question. Do you think PR and journalists in Rwanda or in Africa in general have done what it takes to change the narrative of PR? Maybe I should start with Gonza.
Journalists and public relations.
Yeah.
We have done something, but we haven't done what is sufficient
Sure.
to change the narrative over the continent. But we usually say it's not that there's much different from what is told. There are people who expect a better story than the reality, and it's not the job of journalists to put some flowers over the story if it is not accurate. It may be the job of the public relations people, but we converge. Our interests at times converge because we both tell the story.
Sure.
So it is important that we are communicators. Of course, as you said in the introduction, our job as journalists be objective. Even though most of the times, actually, most of the content we have
Is subjective.
is subjective, is public relations.
Sure.
There is an interesting quote attributed to George Orwell that journalism is printing or broadcasting what someone does not want. Anything else is public relations. It makes journalism complicated because the mere facts, even though they are good or somebody wants them published, and if they are newsworthy, they are put out there. So at times, the difference between journalism and public relations may not be very clear-cut. So on the African story, it's very good that they have organized this conference. Us as journalists, we hope, since they are inside the institutions and organizations, they give us much more information that we put out there. We need each other.
Sure. Feel free to jump in whoever wants, but he mentioned quite something interesting that we've done everything, but we've not done what we're supposed to do. We probably have not exhausted all our options in telling the African story. What do you think we've gone wrong, journalists and you, PR practitioners? Kenneth?
Mm-hmm. Thanks. And this I knew would be a very interesting conversation because of the choice of your headline, Enemies or Friends. And I would say, as somebody who has been on both sides of the story, inside the newsroom and then in the corporate comms world, if journalism is really an enemy of PR, then it is that kind of enemy that you would rather keep as close as possible. Because in the practice of public relations, media is a key outlet. In fact, when we are defining or designing public relations strategies, you see, we need to actually start by these two terms, public relations. In general terms, the public is one. People look at the public as one entity. But in PR, they break down public and make it publics. Now, every institution, every organization has a set of publics for whom they have to take care of, because each public has its own interests. Now, it's the work of a public relations manager, specialist, officer, to take care of the interests of all these publics. Let me give you an example of, let's say, a bank. They have, the first public is the customer. The second public are the employees and staff. You have the shareholders. You have the regulator. You have, let's say, the media. Now, whenever you're defining publics, the media is the cross-cutting factor. It's always there. It doesn't matter which industry you're in. So that's why it confirms what Gonza says, that no matter what you do, PR and the media always converge. So, in other words, a PR practitioner plays at the intersection of corporate communication and journalism. Now, there are emerging conversations that PR has killed what you would call traditional journalism because of different aspects. For example, part of the main work of a PR practitioner is pitching stories. The problem is a PR practitioner pitches the good side of the story. Okay? But the journalist, like Gonza says, they're interested in showing the ugly and the good. The PR person, you're paid to keep the ugly from the public. So that's where the conflict often comes. And maybe Herbert will explain how he deals with that kind of conflict.
He should actually jump in. PR has, in many cases, has facilitated armchair journalism. It's unfortunate. But where do you come in, like he was saying? What has been the state of PR in Rwanda? And what is it? What is the relationship between you and the newsrooms?
Thank you, Ethan, for hosting us. I would like to first start with taking it continental. You asked, have we done enough to change the narrative of Africa? I think the narrative of Africa, we've not done enough, first of all. And I think the reason that not much has been done is because Africa itself is causing this. Different nations, I will not mention different nations, but nations they're in conflict, they're in disarray, they're disorganized, leadership is not working to the benefit of the people, and they don't have the positive stories to tell, they don't have the positive stories to portray, so they can't be, you can't even call it PR. But when I bring it down to Rwanda, I'm not even trying to compare or what, but I would like to say Rwanda, the reason why, we've had critics saying we have a strong PR machinery, everything being said here is PR. I don't think that's right, because what is happening in Rwanda is, everything that's happening in Rwanda speaks for itself. The activities, the improvements, the story that has come from 1994 to 2019, the actions speak for themselves. Actions speak louder. So we don't even have to stress doing PR. We just tell the story as it is. Our women have improved, healthcare has improved, the economy has improved, they're winning accolades here and there. We don't have to even do anything called PR. The newsrooms as well, they don't find it hard to tell the story. They are telling, all our stories have to be positive. But again, the media comes in, they say, they tell the truth, and PR, but what I say is PR gives them the stories. We give the stories to the media. We are not influencing. We are not influencing, but we give you the topics.
You give us the good stories.
We give you the topics. We give you the topics.
I wish there was someone to give us a hint of, scoops, like they say. Yeah. So basically, you've been feeding us the wrong information.
Who say that we've been feeding you with the wrong information?
You're giving us the good stories as if
we have good stories, we share good stories.
Yes.
So it's the responsibility of journalists to do
not only the
only have the good stories to share.
We have good stories to share. I
Only
will just join.
Stories.
No. Yes. Of course, we have challenges, okay, and we all go through hard time. But I think what we share with journalists, it is what we think we have to feed our communities with. Gonzalo said it. We all serving the same community. And the public, when you talk about the public, they are the same public they are talking to. And the reason why we're taking them as partners, it is because we know they're taking us to the same audience, to the same public. I think what we did wrong has been to consider journalists as enemies, as you're saying, and don't understand the synergy between what we do and what they do. For believers, they always say two are better than one. Okay, that means there are some other things that we can't do alone. They usually use it for marriages, but this is actually one of the people that we never put together, so that we could maximize, so that we could make sure that we are feeding our communities with the right information, but also using the channels that they already have in place. I think this is what we've been missing, and it's a good opportunity for us to look at the past. Rwanda has been very good at that. My first job was with the Unity and Reconciliation Commission, and I remember every time we'll talk to visitors, we'll tell them, listen, this is what happened to Rwanda. We one day stopped and sat together and looked at, what went wrong. And once we've identified our weaknesses, we worked on them. And why did we work on them? Because we didn't want the situation to come back. We didn't want the pain to come back. And what did we do? We just inspired ourselves on ongoing initiatives. So that means we have solutions with us. That means we have the answers that the public and the communities need. But what we're trying to do, we're just trying to work, on different side, and not putting ourselves together to reinforce our roles and actually better serve that community.
Actually, to best put it, if you want to understand, it's a difference in perspective. Yeah. If you put a glass on this table and it's half full, and you ask a journalist, what do you see? Mm-hmm. A journalist will tell you, I see a half empty glass. A PR person will probably tell you, I see a half-full glass. So it's a difference in perspective. Yeah. But also,
it's also the job of the journalist to ask, where is the other half?
Where is the other half?
And we do agree with that.
And we do agree with that.
So I actually want to bring in Gonza. Do you think PR practitioners have been very nice to us to make our job as objective as possible as journalists?
Two things. Have we pushed them enough? It is also a question on our part as journalists. I don't think so. I don't think we have pushed them enough. Most of the times, I think someone said about how we feed. It's you who said it. Yeah. They feed the information. Amateur journalism. Yeah. So we have to look at both sides. Have we pushed the PR people enough? Secondly, I also think they also haven't done enough. One of the biggest challenges we face, I think they would explain to us, is most of the times most public relations officers are not the spokespeople of the organizations, especially in the government. So you find a problem when the public relations officer, you have an immediate question, they have to consult somebody else, and it takes a process. So there you may not get sufficient information quickly. The boss may not be very available immediately because they have other assignments. So at times we would prefer as journalists if people who speak for organizations are highly pressed. Most public relations people are very highly qualified. So it is important the structures within the organizations put them on a managerial level so that they have authority, they attend board meetings, they know the big issues. They have authority to release documents which are not classified.
That's pretty much the argument I was making in my column today. Because the problem, and I totally agree with you, a lot of our PR people are lowly placed in these corporate structures. It's very rare that you find a Harvard and an elite who are at a level where they can independently decide on behalf of an institution and say, okay, I'll release this, I won't release this. But I think it's also one of the reasons why the summit you're talking about, which is coming next week, because here it's an opportunity for Rwandan PR actors to benchmark with their counterparts from the rest of Africa. The rest of Africa, you know, PR people are spokespersons because they've been given that capacity, confidence, and power to actually speak on behalf of their institutions. But it also takes training, it also takes seriousness. You know, you don't just give a brand to anyone. So we're talking about capacity building. We're talking about breaking the current status quo in corporate structures. But we're also talking about building the institution that he leads, the Public Relations Association of Rwanda, to actually be a strong institution that adds value to the local PR actors so that they give them the kind of training and capacity and confidence that is required to act at a level that Gonza wants. You know, so these are baby steps, but I think with this summit, it will probably inspire the local association to actually move and put the institution to where other institutions like in Kenya, Nigeria. If you go in those countries, by the way, an institution cannot, it's rare that an institution will hire a public relations person without talking to the PR association to actually verify the capacity and competences of the person. They need to be certified. So all these things are missing currently in our local setup, which is why the media people will see some of these challenges. I know because I remember when I was an active journalist, I used to bypass them and call the CEO directly. But when I got a chance to act as a PR manager, I made sure that no journalist calls my CEO without me knowing, because you know, because
it your job.
But absolutely,
yes, it actually happens a lot.
Yeah.
This is the practice in this country. Where how do we even change that? Because for me, if I need first-hand information or real fast information, I don't need to go through a PR. I'll instantly call whoever is concerned. How do we change that? What is the cause? Do even PR practitioners know the do's and don'ts of their practice?
I'll say, I think this is the reason why we're all putting ourselves together.
Yep.
He talked about empowerment, he talked about capacity building, but there's also the networking part of it. You bring together all the PR practitioners of Africa, and like the PR association at the African level has been working for
over about 75 years.
75 years.
And ours was established
10 years ago?
10 years ago.
10 years ago.
Okay, and 10 years ago, we're still talking about challenges that we have to put all the practitioners together. But for people who have been working together for more than 50 years, okay, what do we do? How do we use the opportunities that we have offered to us as Rwandan, but also offers to us as practitioners? So I think the first thing to do is, I said it again, let's leave the past with the past, okay, and look at where we are today, and look at the opportunities that we have. Our country is giving us a lot of opportunities. Our country is giving us a lot of platforms, okay. Today, people talk about Rwanda. No, but I mean, we're talking about what we need to do, okay. Part of what we need to do is to understand what are the challenges down there, and I'm not talking about PR and comms practitioners.
I'm talking about the opportunities you're saying are there.
Yes, but they're there. Am I lying? They are
Okay,
there.
we need to scrutinize that.
Okay, we'll do that. So what are the challenges? We're talking about the relationship between both journalist and peer. What are the challenges? We're just mentioning it, but without knowing what is happening between both parties. And those parties, we do believe that putting them together will be
Actually, to back up Adeline, if you look at, if you go to any journalism or mass communication school, you will never find an independent course that teaches public relations. It's actually a unit under mass communication. My first degree, I did it in mass communication, and the first year we did print, we did broadcast and PR. And it's only in second or third year when you choose that I want to be in print or I want to be in PR. So there's a reason why these two are trained together. Because the skills you need as a journalist oftentimes come in handy when you're a PR practitioner. And this probably explains one thing you probably would pick up in your questions, why a number of good journalists leaving the newsroom and joining the PR world. Because those particular skills are needed. I'll give you an example. What I do in many cases, or in any PR person's daily life, is to pitch stories from a perspective that will interest a journalist. Which angle should I take? It's no longer a matter of writing a press release. You have tried a press release from the perspective of a journalist because you want this press release actually published in form of news. So you have to know the titling, you have to know how to craft a story in a journalistic language, you have to put all the quotes, you have to do the research, you have to balance it, add the figures, so that if journalists don't have the resources to actually invest in their own story gathering, you give them a ready-made story, they will put it to print. And that's
so you know what to tell them.
So it works for them. It works for all of us.
But does it work for the audience the moment it is published without the necessary scrutiny? I know there is a conversation globally. For us, our code of ethics says that it is incompatible to be a journalist and a public relations at the same time. I was in Denmark recently visiting the union there. Actually, they are both there. They consider public relations people as journalists because they produce content that goes to the public. So that conversation can go on forever. But the main point is, can we look under, more behind the other half empty glass? Where is the other half? Is it not there? Is it adding? Will it come about? Or it will continue reducing? So if we just publish because it's easier, we understand most public relations people these days are skilled journalists, they are taking them away from our profession. Does it eliminate our function of scrutinizing, of not just publishing the good stuff?
Sure. Herbert, does brands and organizations understand your role as PR practitioners to make it easy for you, for a journalist, to even approach you and instantly get the feedback on a certain story or information that they want?
Well, what I can say, I will not speak on behalf of all the corporate institutions, but what I can say, so far, according to the profession, public relations is actually a very, very important profession. It is a career. You know how the lawyers like saying that there are three careers in the world. You know them, the lawyers, the doctors, and the PRs. You know? The media or PR, but there are three. But the thing is, I think going back to one of the questions you asked, how can we improve? I think before we get to empowerment of the existing practitioners, how about we start in the schools? Like Ken was saying, that in the faculties, we don't have faculties that differentiate PR, communication, and journalism. Well, there's one university that I know that differentiates. They have 3 departments in the whole faculty of mass communication. But again, where the trends are heading today, we now have integrated marketing and communication. It's not just PR. There's the digital world. There's social media. So it's a mixture of all these things. And if starting from the education, the curriculum, the syllabuses, if we don't start from there, what the people we're going to produce, the practitioners we're going to produce, will all be missing one part or the other. So I think we need to start from there. Then when we come into the practice, institutions like I was saying, there are both sides to blame, both the practitioner, the professional, because if I sit in my company and I don't know that the Department of Energy is doing this and this, the Department of Biochemistry, there is something latest on their side, then I will have an issue. That's when the media will come to ask me and I'll say, let me first consult. So you need to empower yourself. Don't just sit on your desk, go on the net and what? Have all the information of your company on the fingertips so that when these guys come, I can say something that I'm confident about. Then that way, you will make your superiors, your bosses, confident about you, and next time, they will again delegate you to go and speak on behalf of the company.
Let's go for a very short break, and then I can bring in some of your comments on our Twitter handle and see what you're saying about this topic. Public relations versus journalism, enemies or friends. Let's see what you have to talk about. But before we get there, a very short break. All right, let's start it off. Here are some of your comments already. Let me start it off with this one, our Bobby Lutarinwa. Without a doubt, journalism and PR are their friends. That's what he's actually saying. Both their works are integrated. However, I believe capacity building in both professionals is needed to smoothen works on both sides. Thank you so much, Bobby, over there for your comment. David Kezio Musoke, PR managers are not necessary or obvious designated spokespersons of brands and corporate bodies. Thank you so much. I think we need to put this into consideration. Then let's see. Now, this is Eric Cabrera. They are 100% friends. Can't miss this show. Thank you so much. I hope you're watching Eric over there. Now, I have this one from Richard Quizera. He's a journalist. I don't know if he's still a journalist, you will tell me, but he's an influencer. All right, okay. We're neither friends or enemies. This is rather a love-hate relationship. Journalists blame PRs for withholding real newsworthy information and instead provide sugar-coated side of their stories to protect image of their institutions. I think this is what Kenneth Agutama mentioned at the beginning of this, that they want to give you the right side of the story. And it's up to you as a journalist to dig deep and find out which one is actually right. Richard Wojera, in this age of fake news and competitive journalism, tabloids and responsible reporting, how do PR gurus like Herbert and Adeline ensure integrity and transparency of their brands are maintained without fact-based stories and not seen just as marketing gimmicks? Interesting one. Richard, thank you so much for your comment. This one, Free Bobby Wine. P, interesting name over there. P. Oro, I'm not interested in knowing how this green solution is going to translate into affordable housing. Oh, I think this is a previous one that we had last week. Thank you, though, for your comment. Richard, again, public relations practitioners, on the other hand, have belief that journalists do not mean well in their correction of information. Here we are again. They accuse journalists for sometimes being interested in reporting what is controversial and negative about their organizations. Roger, for me, the biggest challenge towards... All right, I think this is a previous one. Could that be all about this? The issue... Okay, there's this one, Anicent Muriro. The issue is not PRs or journalists, but the content they share. Where does that content come from? We also need to find that. All right. Happy birthday, my friend Ethan Tashobia. Oh, it's actually my birthday, so send the best. Thank you for the messages. I've been seeing them.
Should have brought a cake.
No, cakes are allowed. You can find me outside the studios if you want. And thank you so much, Bahato, for that message. Let me see. Nice. There's this gentleman, Pa Inwan. This guy is the PR and communications expert at Rwanda Tea. Journalists of nowadays have interest in stories that can spoil names of institutions. Few report on their real progress, and this makes PRs cherish those that can report the positive side. Interesting. Those that wait patiently for failure will never be friends with PR practitioners. He said it all. I don't need to repeat it again. All right, quite a number of happy birthday messages, rather. Let me look at this. Enoch Mukamiri, official. All eyes on focus, though one is against the other. The journalists in Africa display government constraints faster than displaying the government developments to the world. They are entertained by bad news. Is this true? Do journalists really look for bad news, or we want critical sides?
I think it's what Gonza is saying.
I mean, it's the dog eat man or man eat the dog story.
Or looking for the half, for the missing half of the glass.
Exactly. So what is newsworthy? That people should consider that. Yeah. As we said earlier, journalism is supposed to be objective. So it's not looking for only the negative side. People should report the facts as they are, regardless of whether they are good or bad. As long as there is balance, report that. So a journalist who is looking specifically for the bad story is not being objective. Look for the story. How it comes, you don't decide. The facts decide how it goes. The other thing is when there is this idea of hostility, competition thing that the journalists, somebody said that some PR think journalists are always looking for something bad. Of course, the PR are paid to make sure that only the good goes out.
Exactly.
And it's also the job of the journalist to take both sides. So if somebody is unhappy that the journalist is looking for the other side, it's part of the job. Just give your facts out there, then the editorial will decide. Don't assume that the editorial will decide for you. Even if you are the marketing part, you are paying advertisement. Yes, you are paying for your pages in the advertising, but the editorial pages, you have no say there. We have had that conflict before, where a company signs a contract with a media house, and the contract there is a clause that as long as this contract stands, you will not publish anything negative against us. We have that case. That contract by nature is...
tell us how we are going to change that clause.
That clause by nature is illegal because it contravenes the media law, which does not allow censorship. You are using your money to censor editorial. Your pages, as long as they are, you agreed on them, it's an editorial, it goes that. The others... The newsroom decides how to cover your company. But of course, so is a fight in the newsrooms and in the media house. The newsroom and the marketing people usually have that fight, saying that, no, we have to maintain good relations with the customer. It's an ongoing fight. It can't have a solution. We appreciate if you have, if your company is giving us some advertisement, definitely there are other benefits. But professionally, advertisement should not influence.
How do we change this?
I don't agree with the notion that some corporate institutions using money, influence the media institutions. What we need to know...
influence, like you said, through clauses like that.
If we know, as public relations professionals, a good PR practitioner has to have and maintain a good relationship with the media. Without that, you won't even be required to use your money or to influence them to kill a story or what. As long as you maintain your good relations, you're a good PR person. And I've experienced a number of times whereby some media have misinterpreted some of the topics we give them, some of the reports we give them, easily. Recently, I had a case with a regional paper. The guy couldn't report an economic statement, a bank statement. And he messed up everything. He messed up all our stakeholders. He messed up the readers. He misled everyone. It was a simple case of misunderstanding. And he didn't come to the other source. He just landed on it, was like, oh,
there we go.
This client is exiting this and this place, and he messed up everything. And when we asked, where did you get this news? And sometimes the worst thing is they even attribute it to someone. Wrongly. They can easily go and lie that so-and-so said this and this in this institution, when it's a lie, because they either want to sell their papers. Now, that's where now we start conflicting. So what I did was just to call the editor, explained, And, I mean, the story they apologized, it was changed, it was pulled down. Yeah? So there's a case of lack of knowledge, case of lack of experience, a case of rushing. You know, they don't want to ask both sources. PRs also are relaxed. They don't even follow up, you know, and you end up doing damage control instead of having had your own strategy whereby you need to first create those relations with the media so that you mitigate these risks. Earlier on in another conversation we had it. I said, first learn how to mitigate instead of going on the defensive all the time. Create relations with the media. They will always ask you, by the way, I heard this and this, even outside on the street. Is it true? Otherwise, they will rush to.
And that's why I said if indeed journalists or media are enemies of PR, then they are the kind of enemies you want to keep closer.
Yeah.
Because one thing for sure is that if you are a PR person of an institution, you want somebody who will be honest with you and tell you your ugly side so that you deal with it before it blows, you know. So I'm a strong believer in proactive public relations management as opposed to reactive. And a lot of our institutions here are very reactive. And they end up spending a lot of money. And what I know psychologically is that every time you react after the bad thing has gone out, you rarely make any difference.
Sure.
So it's also important to really, and that's why I said defining your publics. Every institution you manage, it doesn't matter which institution, the media are always one of the publics. And one of the key challenges we have here is capacity and knowledge on some of these sectors that we represent. A lot of our journalists don't have the skills to report on the financial sector, for instance. As a public relations person who wants the best proposition of your institution, what do you do to fill that gap? Propose a training, propose a capacity building training for the people in press media, so that when they come to your press conference to cover your institution, you're comfortable that the people you're talking to are not going to misinterpret and you end up with the wrong story. So all these are issues that we need to focus on moving forward.
Sure.
I agree on that part.
We have less than 3 minutes. You'll probably make that as your closing remarks. As Rwandan communicators, African communicators, Rwandan communicators who want to change the African narrative, what should we expect from this conference that is coming to Rwanda, coming to us? Probably this is something that you can as well comment on.
We talked about it this afternoon. First of all, let's look at what is working for them. We're talking about our challenges today, but no one is raising the hand to say, I have solutions and I'm ready to go for them. They have success stories. They've been working together. They've been
for about 70 years, like you mentioned.
For 70 years. But again, we're saying the narrative of Africa is not presented the way it's supposed to be. So can we look at it as an opportunity to sit all of us, experts, and look at what has been out and look at what do we have now. We were saying this afternoon that we all have a story to tell, individually, as a country, as a nation, as companies. So if we're looking at how to identify the stories for the brands that we are serving, that means we'll be very good to look at what are the stories of our nations. And I think having all the practitioners together, this is a huge opportunity to use all the platforms together and talk to the general public of Africa, including Africans and people. And of course, we're part of Africa.
Much as all these experts are convening in Rwanda, they're also coming to learn from Rwanda. How did we change the narrative of Rwanda from 1994 to being a model country? We have very many African countries, including even European and Asian countries, coming to learn from us. So how did we do it? For me, I will stick to the fact that actions speak louder than words. Leadership, a willingness. But we also, Rwanda is lucky that I think part of the reason we are very, very successful is because we have a unique story. We have a unique side to Rwanda. Where we came from, most countries, of course, did not experience what we experienced. But our story, the way it is running from 1994 to today, a lot of countries have what to learn from us. But we're also going to learn from them. We're going to have master classes. We're going to have workshops. We're going to have plenary sessions where people will be debating. We're going to have evening sessions. But it's going to be a 4 days full package. Full package. Attending the conference.
It's fair.
attending the conference has a price. As Rwandans are required to pay $600.
Interesting.
For the 4
Foreigners are paying $950.
PR is expensive.
Yes. But there's a lot to learn and there's a lot to
Knowledge is
share
expensive.
from this
Knowledge is
conference
expensive.
coming up. Yeah.
Thanks. Gonza, you wanted to say something? Your closing remarks, and then we end
No,
this.
that one passed. What I will say is that whatever the case, the story has to be accurate. Journalists should not be expected to sugarcoat a story if the facts are telling something different. It's the good thing Albert is saying that Rwanda has a unique story. Yes, so it is accurate. That's why it has remained that. So for the rest of Africa, if they want a nice story, the facts on the ground must reflect it. If there is need to change governance structures, if there needs to improve economy, ending conflicts, that's how we will come about. Nobody should expect journalists to distort facts just because to portray a positive image.
Ladies and gentlemen, should we end it? Let's end it here, right? Adeline, thank you so much for coming through.
Thank
Ken,
you for hosting us.
Thank you. Albert, it's a pleasure having
Thank you for hosting us on your
Gonza,
birthday.
thank you so much for coming.
Thank
And
you for
that's-
Happy
inviting us.
birthday.
Where is the cake?
Oh, happy.
To you. Happy birthday to you.
Where's the cake?
We have a cake for you in the lobby. The PR people,
Nice.
not
Right.
the media.
Yeah, and we're not trying to influence.
You're not influencing the discussion. And that brings us to the end of the discussion right here. But it doesn't just end here. As you heard, next week there is going to be a PR conference of bringing together 13th to 17th, right? Bringing together PR experts from across Africa. They will be convened here in Rwanda talking about the changing African narrative through storytelling. And pass by and learn some language. But I mean get some knowledge about telling the African story. All right, have a good one. My name is always Ethan Tashovia. See you next Sunday, same time, right here. Bye-bye.